Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Wednesday everybody. Let's start as we usually do with the Chinese economy. And first up, we have new export numbers for the months of January and February. It's normally good to view these months together, as Chinese New Year can fall at different times each year. According to official data published by the Chinese Customs Authority on Tuesday, exports fell 6.8% in February and January, year on year, improving from December's drop of 9.9%. But obviously still down. Export demand from Southeast Asian countries increased in the first 2 months, while trade with the European Union, the US and Japan fell. Imports dropped 10.2% during the same period, higher than the 7.5% decline in December. Analysts explain that the drop in imports is likely a reflection of weaker commodity prices and a stronger dollar, and the overall picture on the trade front is at best mixed. Quote, China's trade figures for the first 2 months of 2023 were mixed, while the general trend remains weak, end quote. David Chu, a China economist with Bloomberg Economics, argues that the decline in China's exports in the first 2 months of 2023, quote, is consistent with the view that external demand will drag on the economy's recovery after propelling growth over the previous 2 years, end quote. Adding, quote, that means domestic factors will have to do all the heavy lifting, end quote. There were some bright spots in the numbers, however. Not all industries are feeling the pinch. The China customs data show that China exported 682,000 vehicles in the first 2 months of 2023, a 43.2% increase year on year. Vehicle exports by value increased almost 80% over the same period. The positive performance was driven, no pun intended, by the sale of new energy vehicles to Western Europe and Southeast Asian markets. Chinese car makers BYD Co. Limited, SAIC Motor Corp and Neo Inc. are all strong export performers. The industry also enjoys government support, being identified by Beijing as a future industry. Next up, yesterday, the State Council announced plans to create a national financial regulatory body that oversees all parts of the financial industry other than securities. The new super regulator, as some are calling it, which is yet to be officially named, will absorb the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, as well as some functions from the People's Bank of China and the China Securities Regulatory Commission. Under the plan, the new regulator will also oversee the use of data and related digital technologies, absorbing some of the powers of the Ministry of Science and Technology too. The plan is part of a broader strategy to restructure the party and state institutions, and comes right after Beijing vows, during the 2 sessions, to strengthen oversight of financial markets, which we covered thoroughly over the last 2 episodes. According to government data, in Q3 last year, China's financial institutions held over 413 trillion yuan, $60 trillion, in total assets. Analysts believe that this move is to further consolidate the central government's governance authority over the financial system. Quote, this will sort out the friction between the party central committee and the state council as observed in past years, as the power hierarchy will be clearly defined by the plan and people in the system will have no choice but to follow, end quote. Professor Michael Pettis, who we have often quoted on the show, gave an interesting anecdote on this development today. Quote, every semester in my central bank seminar, my Peking University students debate the relative merits of a more centralized regulatory system versus a less centralized one. They usually start out favoring the former, but in the debate much less certain. I am not doing full justice to the debate, but basically they conclude that a more centralized system is more efficient and less likely to be arbitraged by institutions seeking to get around regulations. It is, however, less flexible, tends to suppress innovation, and the resulting financial system more prone to Minskyite balance sheet traps, with misalignments in financial sector balance sheets more closely correlated across the industry. End quote. One last thing for the economy. The US-based Wall Street Journal produced an excellent article titled "China's Cities Struggle Under Trillions of Dollars of Debt." Now, we have discussed this topic a lot recently on China Update, and I'm sure some of you are frankly sick of me talking about it, so I'll quickly just mention a few of the observations made in the article here. The piece writes that 2/3 of local governments are now in danger of breaching unofficial debt thresholds set by Beijing to signify severe funding stress, with their outstanding debt exceeding 120% of income from the previous year. About 1/3 of China's major cities, 1/3, are struggling to pay just the interest on debt they owe, according to a survey by Rhodium Group. In one extreme case, the outlet writes, in Lanzhou, the capital city of Gansu province, interest payments were equivalent to 74% of fiscal revenue in 2021. Next up, US-China relations and the drums of war begin to beat louder. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. It's a huge help. If you're one of the 50% of viewers who's currently not subscribed, subscribing is also a big help, and sharing across platforms is a great way to get the channel out to new people. And as always, anyone who can go the extra mile and be part of the community that keeps this channel sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Also yesterday, on Tuesday, Qin Gang gave his first address to the press as Foreign Minister of the People's Republic of China. In a surprise to some, but not China Update viewers, Qin's rhetoric changed from the softer tone employed during his time as Chinese ambassador to the United States to a harder tone, more consistent with the PRC Foreign Ministry and his predecessor Wang Yi. Qin made several interesting points on Chinese diplomacy in his likely pre-prepared responses, and his comments on Beijing's America policy, including a warning on the possibility of war, is especially noteworthy and indeed deeply concerning. Let us now examine some of these comments here. This is how Mr. Qin opens. Quote, "The world is far from tranquil, being entangled in intertwined turmoils and transformation, the clash between unity and division, and the coexistence of opportunities and challenges. The new journey of China's diplomacy will be an expedition with glories and dreams, and it will also be a long voyage through stormy seas. Under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, we will uphold our foreign policy goals of safeguarding world peace and promoting common development." End quote. He moves to a theme we saw emerge and develop last year, an alternative model for modernization Beijing wishes to promote internationally. Quote, "Chinese modernization offers solutions to many challenges facing human development. It busts the myth that modernization is westernization. It creates a new form of human advancement, and it provides an important source of inspiration for the world, especially developing countries." End quote. He touches too on criticisms of what many commentators call wolf warrior diplomacy. Quote, "In China's diplomacy there is no shortage of goodwill and kindness, but if faced with jackals and wolves, Chinese diplomats would have no choice but to confront them head-on and protect our motherland." End quote. And now for his comments on the United States. This is the warning from China's new foreign minister. Quote, "If the United States does not hit the brake, but continues to speed down the wrong path, no amount of guardrails can prevent derailing, and there will surely be conflict and confrontation. Who will bear the catastrophic consequences? Such competition is a reckless gamble, with the stakes being the fundamental interests of the two peoples, and even the future of humanity." End quote. Of course, these are strong words, which remind us once again of how bad US-China relations has become. And of course, just in case the US and her allies did not get the message, state media was there to make sure there were no ambiguities. Quote, "Analysts said it's unclear whether decision-makers in Washington understand the dangerous trend mentioned by Qin or not, since the US shows almost no sincerity to stop such trend. If they keep provoking China's red lines, the conflict will get more and more likely. End quote. This is the official White House response to Qin's comments too. Quote, "We seek a strategic competition with China. We do not seek conflict. We aim to compete and we aim to win that competition with China, but we absolutely want to keep it at that level." End quote. Nevertheless, we are certainly living in dangerous times. Quote, "Between Xi's comments yesterday that the Western countries led by the United States have implemented all-round containment, encirclement and suppression against us, and Qin's today, it sure feels like the PRC side has decided to level up in responding much more forcefully to what it sees as unfair US accusations and actions. The US government argues it has been responding to what it sees as problematic Beijing behavior, so they are stuck in a bit of a standoff, and there is no off-ramp if both sides don't find a way to de-escalate simultaneously. Any arguments that the US is to blame and so has to make the first move is dead in the water in the current DC environment, just as the PRC is to blame so has to make the first move will not fly in Beijing. And now that Xi has elevated things publicly, and his utterances have been broadcast nationwide and will be studied throughout the system, it is unlikely the PRC side would back down quickly on this elevation, unless the US makes the changes it has been asking for. Expect US-China to get worse faster, and the mooted Thai visit to the US will not necessarily be less provocative to the PRC than a McCarthy visit to Taiwan. I fear we are entering into a much more dangerous period in US-China relations." End quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you everybody for watching. I will see you all tomorrow.